Cool.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. Today it is my huge honour to welcome Mr. Arnold Ma to the show. Hello Arnold, how are you?
Hi Nathan, how's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. I'm also, of course, joined by my co-host and dear friend, Mr. Stokely Howard.
Hello, Nathan. Thanks for the nice introduction.
Yeah, I'll leave it easy today. Arnold, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you're super busy at the moment. I'm just keen to chat to you for about 35 to 40 minutes around your story, the Cumin story, and then also about taking your brand to China and taking Chinese brands over to the West. Essentially, that's what your agency's become known for, and I'm keen to share with our audience the kind of process that they might go through. So Arnold, let's start at the very start. I'm interested to share with our audience first the Cumin journey from start to finish. So you left school. What's happened since then?
You want to go all the way back?
All the way back, man. I'm talking.
Wow.
All the way back.
How long do we have? Did you say half an hour? Yeah. All right, I'll give you guys a condensed story. I don't want to bore anyone. So I moved to the UK when I was 9 years old. Couldn't speak a word of English. So I guess for me, like I've always missed the Chinese culture aspect of like getting involved with Chinese people, Chinese businesses, and just really being part of the Chinese culture. So when I left school, I studied internet technologies. And before that, I was building websites already. So I've always been addicted to the internet. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but the internet seems to have sticked around. So I guess it's a good thing. And I was building websites. I was kind of dabbing into SEO already because when I built an anime fan site, believe it or not. I don't know if you guys watched Dragon Ball Z when you were young.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like a Dragon Ball Z website. I was like the biggest Dragon Ball Z fan, like massive geek. And I built a website. I tried to figure out how to drive traffic to the website. So that's how I got into SEO. Kind of did a bit more on software engineering at uni and network technologies. When I left university, I got a job with a local business where I kind of got more into PPC and SEO, had some in-house training. But it wasn't until I moved into London and worked for a digital marketing agency where I started to really get trained on PPC and SEO. And my MD at the time, they're called Kuzai. I don't know I think you guys know them, right?
I might have come across Kuzai. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So that's why I started basically. And Ben Norman was the MD back then. And he's a really nice guy, right? It's a super great MD, really good entrepreneur. And he always encouraged us to talk about what we love to do within the areas of digital marketing. So for me, that was, I guess, China. So I looked into Chinese SEO, Chinese PPC. It was Baidu back then. To be fair, it still is Baidu now. I started making videos about Chinese SEO, Baidu SEO and PPC, and everyone just kind of like really loved it. Bear in mind, this was like 8 or 9 years ago. So China wasn't as big on the global stage as they are now. So no one was really talking about China in the UK, specifically Chinese digital marketing. And that's when I saw there was a gap in the market and started freelancing. And then I think it was only like 6 months later, I quit my job and started doing it full time. So I guess the rest is history, as they say.
So you set up Cumin. You decided to go with that brand. What made you come up with the brand name?
Cumins. Okay, so there's a story behind this as well, actually. So I love food. I actually just got out of, I just had lunch with some of the colleagues today, and we had these amazing crispy duck chips with an egg on top, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, so I love food, and cumin is named after the spice cumin. So when I was young in China, we used to have these night markets in Xi'an, which is where I'm from, and they always had like amazing noodles, amazing like fried meat and barbecued meat. And my favorite food on the night market when I went with my cousin and my friends were always these lamb skewers, right? They were like really thin strips of lamb meat on metal skewers, like cooked really quickly over a bed of hot charcoal. And it has to be charcoal. I think it's like a specific type of wood as well. And the main ingredient was cumin and chili and salt and pepper. And that was literally my best childhood memory. So when I started Cumin, I thought, why not name it after my favorite thing about China? And
that is such a cool story. I love that. And so just for the audience today, Cumin now specializes in bringing brands over from China into the Western world, service offering, kind of SEO, PPC, web, etc.
So basically anyone that needs help with Chinese marketing, everything from like creative strategy through to content, performance and execution. We specifically focus on Chinese language work. So we have a studio in London with Chinese creatives, designers, and also loads of expats that have worked and studied in China. that obviously is fluent in Chinese as well. Yeah.
Wow. Now, Arnold, so many of our listeners will want to get down to the nitty gritty on this, about Chinese marketing and how they take brands into China, or, how they, or the reverse. Without sort of giving away all your secrets, how do you do this? Is there a process? Is there like a step-by-step model?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you the secret, but it's not really a secret. It's actually really easy. It's really obvious. I guess the process is not the hard part. It's like the execution. It's always in the details, right? So the way we do it is pretty straightforward. We basically try to understand their proposition as much as possible, their native proposition, whether it's a British, European, or American, and we look at the audience. Like I guess with all marketing, right? You look at the audience first in China, and you look at what their cultural tensions are and how you can essentially align the brand proposition with Chinese cultural tensions. So it takes a bit of reinventing rather than copy and pasting their brand proposition, their messaging pillars, their comms, and their creative. We pretty much do everything from scratch, but we make sure we're aligned to what their brand stands for, rather than ripping that out and changing it completely. So it's kind of like a rework of what their brand stands for. Like the magic spot in marketing, it's like what the brand stand for and what the audience want. And you have the Venn diagram, where the middle is what you want to focus on. So what we're specializing is understanding, because a lot of us are British and we grew up in the UK, we understand normally like British brand propositions or Western brand propositions. And we also try, I guess another key advantage is that we understand Chinese people and cultures. So it's easier for us to align those two things and find the middle ground for them to create local communication and creative that really resonates with Chinese people.
That's really cool.
Wow.
I've got a question here around restrictions. I mean, I'm sure just like British brands and kind of culture, there's plenty of restrictions and hurdles to overcome. When you're working with Chinese brands, what typical restrictions do you find and how do you overcome them?
I think the biggest restriction is probably just communication, really. Like so for us is kind of like, how do we make sure the brand resonates locally? And it always comes down to people and cultures. It's not the platform, it's not the content, because everyone can create content, right? It's not hard. It's like, how do you create content that people actually care about? And for us, that's like the hardest thing in terms of like making sure the brands understand, but also is on board with what we create for China, because it's going to be, chances are like pretty much for everyone, it's going to be different to their marketing strategy and their creative in the West, because Chinese people and culture are so different. So for us, like the barrier on the brand side is how do we convince the brand to do something that's different to what they're doing currently?
Sure.
I don't know. Do you mean restrictions like when entering the market in China as well?
Yeah, kind of restrictions around rules. So I see that kind of WeChat and things like that. There's certain platforms that you have to be on and you can't not be on. And then there's other platforms that don't exist out there. So I guess for those that are totally new to this, for example, I believe Facebook's not available over there, or it is?
Yep. Yeah. So Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, basically pretty much every social media platform is banned except for LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the one that's available globally and in China. Actually, LinkedIn is great for B2B, as you know already, because it reaches China as well. So other restrictions are like, it's easier to do cross-border e-commerce than it is to sell your products, like ship and sell locally, because you don't have to adhere to local regulations when you're doing cross-border e-commerce. And China's actually making it a lot easier to do it. So anyone listening out there, you should definitely think about cross-border e-commerce. Some other things are maybe local so like having like a company. I think a lot of people feel like they need to have a local presence. They need to get onto, you heard of Tmall and Taobao, like basically the Chinese version like Amazon and eBay and stuff. So a lot of people feel like they need to get on these big platforms. They need to have local presence. I think people forget when they go into China. I guess this applies universally. Like, it's more important to build a demand than it is to build a shop. I think people tend to spend too much money to build a shop and not enough money to build a demand, because like Chinese consumers are very global and very sophisticated now. If they want something, they'll find a way to buy it. Like, so build awareness, and there's loads of opportunity to build awareness. We can talk about Douyin later if you like, / TikTok. But
Well,
it's much.
that would kind of be the next question, right? Is actually, there's a couple of restrictions. One we touched upon there is, to those that aren't aware, the standard social channels, you would think, oh, okay, set up a brand in China, I'll just plaster it all over Instagram or whatever. But actually, you can't do that out there. So what do you use out there? It's WeChat and some other channels?
Yeah, so there's a few different platforms, and honestly, guys, I could talk about this all day, but I'll try and keep it short. So WeChat is the main communication platform. It's like a combination of WhatsApp, Facebook, PayPal, Uber, like basically. So I always call it a social OS, an operating system, right, guys? You know, like Windows and OS X. Is basically a kernel that hosts a collection of apps, right? It's really simple. It's a really simple concept. It's been around for decades. And that's pretty much what WeChat is. But WeChat, where it differs is that the kernel itself is a social media platform. So imagine Facebook hosting all your apps that you use on a daily basis. That's what WeChat is. And it's so powerful because it's an ecosystem in itself. So you can create service and utility for your customers. So if you're in China, like the Chinese banks, so have a app on WeChat where you can get in the queue before you arrive at the bank, or you can split a bill at a restaurant, or you can order a taxi, or you can pay for your utility. You can order a dog groomer, come and groom your dog. You can basically live on WeChat and do everything on there. And in fact, I'll tell you guys a really funny story. I was in China like in November last year, and I was in taxi, so I had cash on me, obviously. Like, I was like, China, cash is king. I tried to pay the taxi driver with a 100 renminbi bill, which is only 10 pounds. It's not that big. And he was like, oh, I don't have change for that. I can't accept cash. And I was like, what are you talking about? You can't accept cash. He's like, yeah, you can pay Alipay or WeChat Pay. But I didn't have money on my Alipay or WeChat Pay account. So I literally couldn't pay the taxi driver with my cash in my hand. And that's how much Chinese economy has changed. It used to be like a pure cash economy when everyone had cards, but no one used it. Now it's like pure mobile wallet economy where literally like the auntie selling vegetables from a garden would accept WeChat Pay and Alipay. And people, it's so much so that cash has become redundant. So WeChat is the first platform, and it's more service and utility. And it's more kind of like, I guess, one-to-one communication. So if you're a brand, you want to focus on how you can best serve your customers and who can build more affinity with your customers. If you want to build awareness, like say you were saying about blasting Instagram, the equivalent of that in China is probably Weibo is like an older platform. I feel like it's a bit saturated like Instagram, right? But Douyin, on the other hand, which is Chinese version of TikTok, is like TikTok's bigger brother. It's where most of the users are, and the functionality is way advanced. You have integrated e-commerce, live commerce, and everything. So Douyin is where you want to build your awareness if you're a brand, where you want to start, because it's still a relatively new platform. It hasn't reached saturation. There's still more users than there are content. And the algorithm right now is very meritocracy based. So it's not like trying to push paid ads in front of people like Facebook or Instagram, where it's basically pay to play, right? On Douyin, it's still very organic. If you have great content, you get the people.
Sure.
So I think, yeah, for me, like Douyin is where you want to build your awareness, and WeChat is where you want to kind of build on that awareness and build better affinity and focus on service for your customers.
And you mentioned something like a Google equivalent.
Yeah, so Baidu is basically the Chinese Google.
That's run ads like a pay-per-click model like you do on Google?
Yeah, 100%. They have an ad platform. It's I hate to say it's basically like a copycat of Google. Actually, their ad platform is a bit more advanced. There's less accountability, so you can do like homepage takeovers and stuff. It's really cool. Okay. The coolest thing I've seen is like a transform. When I searched for Transformers movie in China, the whole homepage turned into Optimus Prime, and like a SERP result basically went all crazy and turned into that was like, and it was like book your cinema tickets now. So you can do a lot more on the Baidu ad platform than you can on Google.
And do you think that will come over to the West eventually, Arnold?
I don't know. I think Google probably has more accountability that they have to hold up to, right? Like if they did homepage takeover, maybe people will start complaining and users will be like, oh, I can't believe you're selling out. Whereas Baidu just don't care.
I mean, I was going to ask you about the benefits of taking a UK brand to China, but you've just gave us so many. But imagine that I am a startup now, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got an app or a tech startup. I need to be in the Chinese market. How would I go about doing that, and what are the benefits of that over than sort of launching in the UK, for example?
I think again, like I would honestly focus first on just creating content. There's Chinese people. The biggest benefit is that there are just so many people speaking the same language, living the same culture in one single location. So if you go into Europe, you have to think about all the different languages, all the different cultures, all the different types of people. Once you go into China, you got like 1 billion people living the same life, speaking the same language. So one of your campaigns could reach insane amount of traction. So if you're starting to build content, right, you can create one campaign that would reach like 10, 100 times the amount of people you would do in the UK. So I think that's probably where the biggest win is. I would honestly start with Douyin. I keep saying this, but if you have the capability to create short videos in-house, and it doesn't take much, it's all lo-fi videos. I mean, lo-fi doesn't mean low quality, but that's a different story. So it's lo-fi videos, and you just need to create loads of really good content. You can get your brand out there really easily, just because you can get awareness on that platform so much quicker than you can on like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, so on and so forth. And yeah, I guess the benefit is it's just such a huge single market for any product, really.
Arnold, I'm really interested to talk a bit more with you around the cultural differences. So when we're looking to sell in different countries, of course, we have to take into account kind of their culture, etc. When someone's looking to set up in China, what are the main things we're looking for culturally?
The
Is there
biggest
really
cultural
glaring, for example, in the West, we do this, that's a massive no-no if you go out to China.
I think the biggest cultural difference is probably the difference between like a collective culture and an independent culture. And there's positives and negatives on both sides, right? So for me, like the West is very much an independent culture. Like there's a lot of focus on the individual. Like we're very independent. We a lot better initiatives, a lot more proactive, a lot more entrepreneurial, and less relying on other people and people around you. In China, so those are the positives. In China, it's very collective in the sense that you rely on your network a lot more. So there's this thing called the guanxi culture. But basically, rather than if you need a plumber or like a doctor, instead of going on Google, you ask recommendations, and there's always someone in between you and the recommendation. So that's like the guanxi culture. It's kind of like I call it like the world's oldest social graph. It's been around for thousands of years, right?
That's cool.
And I think
cool?
Sorry, go on.
What did you say it was called? That little
guanxi. So it's GUANXI.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's basically how like China's been functioning for thousands of years. It's always been about who you know. It's always been about networks. I mean, yeah, granted, there's an element of that here in the West, but it's not restrictive, right? You can always meet new people without knowing them. You can get to know people. In China, we have a saying: you'd move a mountain for someone you know, but you wouldn't even lift a piece of paper for a stranger. Like that it kind of like, it sounds better in Chinese, but it summarizes the difference between independent network culture. But I think in China also, because of that, when you're a brand, you almost have a responsibility as kind of like to create like the network between your brand and your fans or your customers. So I'll give you a really, really relevant example. So during the COVID crisis, you notice that a lot of Western brands paused their marketing, right? Like they didn't want to say anything because some brands were brave and did really well, like Brewdog. But most brands paused their marketing because they didn't want to risk devaluing their brand equity by doing something wrong, making the wrong move, which can happen really easily. That didn't happen in China. Every brand in China almost had a cultural responsibility to basically create messages of solidarity, to encourage people, to motivate people. It's almost like this cultural responsibility of collectivism where you as a brand, if you didn't say anything, it was considered really bad. So the brands that So the brands that during the last Sichuan earthquake was one of the biggest earthquakes in the world, the brands that did well and created the best campaigns and messaging and solidarity and communications are still doing really well today. And it just shows like how important it is as a brand to remember that responsibility to your customers. And that's part of the culture. Like they look at the collective, whether it's the family, the state, or the brand. And the hierarchy has always been like, it's always been family first, then the state, then the individual. And it goes into their purchasing decisions as well. When they make purchasing decisions, it's either for their family or it's about their image among their peers. So you got to think of it that way as well. It's almost never individual decision. It's always related somehow to either your peers or your family. So essentially some kind of a collective responsibility in the decision making.
And is that China wide, or actually is it particular territories that operate like that?
I think in general it's China wide. It's probably more prevalent in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. In tier 1 cities like Shanghai, Beijing, and Shenzhen, they're becoming more westernized. So you are getting, like, especially the Gen Z, you're getting more people who are more individual focused. But we always say they're kind of stuck between this ideal of like traditional values and modern expectations. So like, where do you go? Do you go traditional? Do you go modern? Normally it's somewhere where they're kind of like stuck in the middle.
Sure.
So I want to ask you this question, Arnold. Many British companies who are traditionally British, they thrive off that, having their products made in the UK, and there's all UK marketing, but are potentially missing out on a huge opportunity in China, but have made that their statement to be this British brand. How would they combat this? I'm sure that's sort of many challenges that a lot of British brands have, because they want to take their brand into China, and they see good opportunity there, but they can't because they've sort of fell into this trap.
It's a really good question, actually. I think it's okay to have I think it's okay to focus on your heritage. I don't think it's a negative. I think it's definitely a positive, but I think the key thing is just gotta try and give people a reason to care, rather than just the fact that you're British or because you have like a strong heritage in the UK. So it goes back to what I was saying about how do you okay, so when you market to the British customers, your brand isn't popular because you're British. You're not saying like, oh, hey, buy us, we're British. There's always something the brand stands for. There's always like either a unique point or unique product or whatever it is. So I think it's just like marketing 101, right? Focus on what that is and try to build a connection with Chinese cultural tensions that overlaps with what your brand stands for.
Yeah.
Quick one from me. We talked a little bit about WeChat, and I saw in the news recently that Apple are looking to take the app down from their marketplace. I mean, surely that would be absolutely catastrophic.
Yeah, I know.
The situation.
I think even if Apple did take it out, I think it'd be a regional thing. So right now, you can't download Douyin outside of China on the App Store, on Apple App Store. You can only download Douyin in China. So I think if they did do it, it might be a case of you can't download WeChat outside of China, or maybe only you can't download WeChat in America. But at the same time, you might still be able to use it if you have it already downloaded. So they do this everywhere, right? Like with Douyin, I downloaded it using my friend's Chinese ID, and I can use it in the UK or anywhere in the world. You just can't update it unless you log back in with a Chinese ID. So I think the WeChat ban will be similar like that. I don't think it'll be a massive impact. I think people always get around it, right? Like, it's the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. The ways of getting around it. It just seems so short-sighted with such a widely adopted platform to stop supporting it. Just seems bonkers.
Yeah, I think like everyone, they have to be political, unfortunately.
So what I want to know, Arnold, really is if I'm a brand, I'm a shoe company or whatever I am, how do I know that I'm at the right stage to go global, or is that just an impossible question?
That's a really good question, actually. I think so. We always say to people, we don't work with the world's biggest brands. Like, we work with everyone from a FTSE 100 business to like a small SME that's just starting. I don't think there's a right time. It's kind of like starting a business or having kids, right? There's never a right time to doing any of those things. You just kind of do it and you hope for the best. I think as long as you feel like internally you have the capacity to be serious about China. And that's what we say to all of our clients. When you can afford to be serious about China, whether you're big or small or new or old, that's when you're ready for China. Because I think a lot of people feel like China is a market where the streets are like paved with gold. You just like go in there and you can earn loads of money, sell loads of stuff to like 1 billion people. But the reality is like domestic brands are getting so sophisticated. Consumers getting more sophisticated. They have so much choice with domestic stuff. There's no reason why they would buy a foreign brand unless there is a really good reason. So you got to create that. And you can only do that when you're really serious. It's not a case of like, you know, like some people are spending the same amount of money marketing wise as they do on Iceland compared to China. It's like, this is not going to work if you're not serious about it. So I think there's no right time. I think as long as you feel like internally you have the bandwidth to be serious about China and to be serious about going into China, then that's the right time.
That kind of links nicely into my next and my final question was around, as a Western brand, if you want to dip your toes in, let's say you're not ready for Cumin just yet, but potentially at some point, where would you start?
Ooh, it's $1 million question.
Can you just set up like was it Baidu or whatever, like a Google kind of equivalent ad campaign and get running with a landing page, or is there much more to it?
No, there isn't actually. You can, where would you start? I mean, I would probably start by doing something simple, like maybe not Douyin because it's like a short video platform. And look, if you have an in-house videographer and your brand is used to creating short form videos, then Douyin is 100% the best place to start. So if you're like a brand that's really good on Instagram stories, really good on TikTok, jump onto Douyin, boom, done. You start building awareness immediately. If that's not the case, I think probably Weibo, which is kind of like Twitter/Facebook equivalent, where you can start posting like image and text-based content. You just need like maybe a Chinese intern or something. There's loads of Chinese students in the UK that can help you out. Yeah. And the final thing is probably just Baidu, like you said. You can create a campaign, do a Chinese landing page. Those are very cheap to create. And then just test for demand. But it's a bit different. Again, it goes back to what I was saying about culture. Like people don't just search for random stuff on Baidu. They don't not like what we do. We might search for like, I don't know, generic products on Google. People don't really do that in China. They find out about stuff and then they do the research. They never really convert. Very rarely do they convert on performance marketing. It's mostly social. So social commerce is massive, which is why I said Douyin if you're into Instagram stories and TikTok, or Weibo if you're more kind of like Facebook/normal Instagram. That's where you can not only get your awareness, but once you have your awareness, you can also do social commerce where you can convert that awareness into sales immediately rather than having to go through like convoluted funnel like you do in the West.
For sure.
So thank you so much. I've got one final question, Arnold.
Okay. Right.
So much knowledge. Me and Nathan are going to be have huge conglomerate businesses.
I'm taking it out to China tomorrow. I can't wait.
Let's do it. We'll go there together. We'll go Shanghai.
8 a.m. flight, right? I want to know what's next for you, Arnold, and for Cumin in the next few years. What's next for your story?
Oh, thank you for asking. So for us, like our mission is to open the world to China, and that kind of works both ways. It's to help China to understand global people and cultures, and it's to help the rest of the world to understand Chinese people and cultures. So we'll always be doing consultancy, and that's kind of part of our blood and part of our core. But we've really gotten into recently within that mission to create, I guess, digital media channels to help people to understand culture and people better. So we have channel on Douyin, channel on TikTok, channel on YouTube. The Western channels are more focused around how people can better understand Chinese people and cultures, like news, technology, everything about China. And then the Chinese channels is about global cultures and people. So we do like a Vox Pop channel where we interview Westerners on the street about what they think about China, about culture, just asking to try things in general. And finally, we have a technology kind of, I guess, technology element where we're, again, same to our mission, in tune with our mission. We're trying to help Chinese creators by connecting with Western brands. So this is a very simple concept. So let's say if you're a let's say if you're Nike and you want to get into the skater niche in China, rather than getting a copywriter who has no idea about skating to write content for social media, we'll connect them with a Chinese skater who can write the content natively. They might not have a huge social media following, so we'll help them to amplify that on paid social. So you get the benefit of authentic content by actual creator and amplification acquisition using paid social. So that's a platform we're working on. And those three essentially the things that we'll be focusing on over the next foreseeable future.
Arnold, do they have influencers and things like that out in China, just like we do here in the West?
Yes, they do. Influence industry is like, so influence industry in China is like the Western influence industry, but on crack. It's absolutely insane. Like, honestly, like some of these guys are so big, they literally have hundreds of millions of followers and reach. You have influencers selling like rockets, like actual rockets. I can take you to space on social media, houses, cars. It's crazy. It's insane.
Incredible. Arnold, I can't thank you enough for the last 45 minutes or so. That was absolutely incredible. I hope those listening and watching have learned a lot more about taking your brand to China. If they do want to find out a bit more about you, Arnold, or about Cumin, what's the best place for them to do that?
LinkedIn. So we do a lot of content on LinkedIn. You can go into daoinsights.com, DAO insights.com. I can't spell insights. I didn't want to. I know the how that might sound. DAOinsights.com is where we basically talk about, it's the only website in English language that talks about Chinese news, technology, and more importantly, marketing case studies. It's all translated directly from Chinese. LinkedIn, search for me, Arnold Ma, where we have a lot of content on there. And those two are probably the best places.
Perfect. Arnold, I can't thank you enough for appearing. Really good to see you, my friend. Look after yourself, and thank you all for listening. See you on the next
You too.
episode.
Thank you, Nathan. Thanks, Stokely. Speak to you guys soon.